Ever wish you could get inside the minds of your target audience? Not just, broad demographics, but real nuanced perspectives. Well, today we're deep diving into a tool that claims to do just that. AI-powered virtual audiences.
It's a fascinating concept.
Yeah.
Instead of spending weeks gathering people for focus groups, imagine getting feedback, like in minutes, from AI personas tailored to represent any group you can think of.
Our source material is kind of a goldmine of conversations with Russ Fisher, co-founder of a company called Rally, which offers exactly this. We'll be exploring what makes Rally tick, dissecting real-world examples, and hopefully helping you decide if this tech could be a game changer for your own work.
Ready to jump in?
Absolutely. So, Rally, what's the elevator pitch?
Think of it as a turbocharged focus group, but instead of real people, you're interacting with AI personas. Want to know what Gen Z gamers think about your new app? Rally lets you create a virtual audience representing that exact demographic and get their feedback instantly.
That's wild, but let's be real. Some listeners are probably thinking, okay, cool tech demo, but is this actually accurate? Can AI really capture the complexity of human thought?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? And it's something that comes up a lot in these conversations. Some experts claim these models are already achieving 80% accuracy, but others argue it's not that simple. Context matters. How you design the virtual audience matters. The questions you ask matter.
So we're not quite at the point where we can ditch traditional research altogether, but this does feel like a glimpse into the future.
Absolutely. And for those who love to get their hands dirty with data, there's a huge opportunity here to help shape this field. Imagine using Rally alongside traditional methods and comparing the results. That could be invaluable for figuring out which techniques work best in which situations.
I love that. You could be on the cutting edge of a research revolution. Now, even if the accuracy isn't perfect, there's another aspect of Rally that has me hooked. Reese talks a lot about this thing called mimetic confusion.
Ah, yes. Mimetic confusion. It's the idea that the language we use to communicate an idea can sometimes unintentionally create confusion or even offense, hindering our ability to connect with our audience. Think of it like accidentally hitting reply all when you meant to send a snarky comment to just one person. Except in this case, it's your marketing message or product idea that's falling flat because you've unintentionally used language that creates the wrong associations in people's minds.
And Rally can help us avoid those awkward reply-all moments in our messaging.
Exactly. It's like having a built-in sensitivity reader for your ideas. Reese shares a great anecdote about testing a potentially viral headline. He thought it was hilarious, but when he ran it through Rally, the AI personas representing his target audience were actually put off by it. He was able to tweak the wording without losing the edge, all thanks to those virtual focus group insights.
Okay, that's seriously cool. It's like having a personal brainstorming partner who can tell you when your joke is actually going to bomb. Now, I'm itching to see how Rally actually works in practice. What are some of the key features that stood out to you?
One of the most impressive is something Reese calls vote mode. Imagine you're trying to decide between two headlines, or maybe you're trying to figure out the optimal price point for a product. With vote mode, you can literally ask your virtual audience to choose between options, just like a real-time poll. It's instant feedback tailored to exactly the demographic you care about. No more guessing games.
So it's not just about getting open-ended responses, you're actually getting quantifiable data. That's powerful stuff. What else?
Another standout feature is the ability to build audiences by cloning personas from existing text. Imagine taking transcripts from customer interviews or even a lively WhatsApp group chat and using that to create digital twins who can answer your questions as though they were those real people.
Talk about granular. And for folks in the online content game, there's a feature that seems tailor-made. The Hacker News Simulator.
Right. It lets you test article headlines against a simulated Hacker News feed to see what might go viral. It's like having a crystal ball for predicting online engagement.
Okay, enough teasing. Let's get into the nitty-gritty of how people are actually using this thing.
Sounds good to me. Let's start with a conversation Rides had with a content creator trying to crack the code of reaching a younger, more tech-savvy audience.
This should be interesting. It's a challenge a lot of creators are facing right now.
Exactly. Is that he's not just creating content, he's competing with AI that's also generating content.
Yeah, he actually says AI is gobbling up content and changing how people find information.
Right.
So how does Rally fit into that?
Well, he needs to go beyond just being useful.
Right.
He needs to be entertaining, engaging, to really stand out.
Mm-hmm.
He sees Rally as a way to understand what makes this younger audience tick, what captures their attention in a world saturated with information.
So it's not just about testing headlines or product names, it's about understanding the bigger picture of how people discover information in the first place.
Exactly. Reese calls it simulating the discoverability journey.
Oh, interesting.
It's like putting on a pair of virtual reality goggles that let you see the internet through the eyes of your target audience.
Right.
Where do they go for information? What kind of language grabs their attention? What makes them click, share, engage?
That's a game changer for content creators.
Right.
If you can understand that journey, you can create content that's tailor-made to be discovered and shared within those specific online spaces.
Exactly.
But enough theory. Let's see this thing in action.
All right, so Reese starts the demo with Andrew, and what's interesting is that he doesn't jump into the fancy features right away.
Right.
He begins with a very familiar interface, something modeled after ChatGPT.
Smart move.
Yeah.
No need to overwhelm people with a brand new interface when they're already comfortable with something similar.
Right.
But I'm guessing there's a twist.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
Instead of prompting just one AI agent like you would in ChatGPT, Rally lets you prompt a whole crowd of agents, each representing a different persona from your target audience.
So it's like having a room full of virtual avatars all ready to give their 2 cents.
Yeah.
What was Andrew's reaction?
He was impressed. He immediately saw the potential for rapid feedback and iteration, which is crucial for content creators who need to move fast and adapt to trends. Rees actually mentions another user who's using Rally with his team to brainstorm content ideas.
Oh, cool.
They're finding that the AI agents are sparking their creativity in ways they never expected.
That's really interesting. It's like having a brainstorming partner who can offer up a fresh perspective, challenge your assumptions, and help you see things from a completely different angle. Remember that vote mode feature we talked about? Andrew loved that too.
Ah, yes.
The instant poll feature.
He saw it as a way to test different headlines, product names, even marketing slogans.
Right.
And get a quick read on which ones resonate most strongly with his audience.
It's like having a built-in focus group that's available 24/7.
Exactly. You know how sometimes you need to understand something super in-depth, but you also need to get that big picture view.
Yeah. So what makes virtual personas so powerful is they combine the depth of qualitative research, like those really detailed interviews that uncover those personal stories and motivations with the statistical power of quantitative data. And instead of choosing one approach or the other, researchers are using both to create these really realistic simulations.
So it's not just about, like collecting data, but creating this like simulated world where these virtual beings can actually think and behave like real people. Kind of like The Sims, but with a much more serious purpose, I guess.
Yeah, that's a great analogy. And to make these simulations, believable, researchers are focusing on achieving what they call parity. It's essentially making sure the virtual personas are genuinely reflective of real people, so their responses and behaviors are as close to reality as possible.
Okay, but how do they actually do that? Like, how do you make a simulation that can actually mimic, the complexities of human behavior?
Well, they start with a combination of organic and synthetic interviews. So organic interviews are what you'd expect. Researchers sitting down with real people, having those in-depth conversations, capturing all those nuances and personal stories.
And the synthetic interviews, those are where the simulation comes in, right?
Right, exactly. Synthetic interviews use pre-scripted questions and algorithms to generate responses that mimic real conversations. It's kind of like teaching a chatbot to sound like a real person.
So we're basically teaching these simulations to talk and think like real people. But how do we know it's working? How do researchers make sure these virtual personas aren't just, spitting out random responses?
That's where the weighted framework comes in. Researchers actually compare the responses from the synthetic interviews to the transcripts from the real-life conversations. They're looking at things like the themes that emerge and the flow of the conversation, even the frequency of certain words.
So it's like a quality control check, making sure the simulation is capturing the essence of a human conversation. They want those synthetic responses to be as close to the real deal as possible.
Exactly. It's not just about making sure the responses sound human, but about ensuring they reflect the diversity and complexity of human thought.
So it's not just some like random idea someone came up with, right? Like this whole approach is grounded in some pretty solid research, I imagine.
Absolutely. There are actually 3 foundational research papers that have really shaped this field, pulling from areas like cognitive science, computational modeling, and behavioral analysis. They're bringing together insights from different disciplines to create this, really robust framework.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
But I imagine gathering all this data from real people and, these simulated interviews, it can get pretty time consuming.
Yeah, you're right. Traditional research can sometimes feel like you're trying to drink from a fire hose, just overwhelmed with data. But here's where things get interesting. Researchers have developed something called the saturation score framework to address that.
Okay, saturation score framework. That sounds pretty technical. What is that, and why should I care?
Okay, think of it like this. You're prepping for a big meeting, and you need to get up to speed on a complex topic. You could read every article ever written on the subject, but that would take forever, right? This framework helps researchers figure out when they've reached a point where they're not getting significantly new information from additional interviews.
So instead of just interviewing endlessly, they have a way to know when they've got enough data to draw reliable conclusions.
Hmm.
That's pretty efficient, right?
Exactly. It's all about maximizing insight while minimizing the time and resources spent on data collection. It streamlines the whole process, allowing researchers to focus on the most valuable information.
Okay, that makes sense. So we've gathered all this data, both from real people and these simulations, but how do we actually make sense of it all? Like, how do we use these virtual personas to gain insights?
That's where the design of the virtual persona architecture comes in. And it's actually quite clever. Think of it like building with Legos. Each block has a specific function, and you can combine them in different ways to create different structures.
So it's flexible and adaptable, depending on the specific research question or business challenge?
Precisely. They've created these modular components that can be combined and recombined to explore different aspects of human behavior. It's like having a set of tools, that you can use to build custom simulations for different purposes.
Okay, that's pretty cool. But how do we make sure these virtual personas stay grounded in reality? I mean, if we're letting these simulations run wild, couldn't they start generating responses that are completely off base?
That's a great question, and it's something researchers are very mindful of. To make sure that the virtual personas stay tethered to real-world data, they use a technique called RAG, which stands for Retrieval Augmented Generation.
RG, that sounds pretty intense. What exactly does that do?
So in simple terms, our RAG acts like a fact-checker for the virtual world. It helps ground the virtual persona's responses in real-world information, reducing the chance of those hallucinations or made-up details that can sometimes happen with AI.
So it's like a safety net, making sure the simulations stay on track and don't go off on some wild tangent.
Exactly. It's all about balancing the creative potential of AI with the need for accuracy and reliability.
Makes a lot of sense. But I'm curious about the data itself. Where does all this information come from? Or are we just relying on researchers to feed it into the system?
Well, actually, it's much more collaborative than that. Researchers are tapping into what they call the silicon crowd, essentially leveraging the collective intelligence of a diverse, tech-savvy population to refine the virtual persona models.
Silicon Crowd. Sounds like a digital think tank. But how does that actually work in practice?
It's about, harnessing the wisdom of the crowd, but in a very targeted way. Think of it like this. You're trying to solve a complex problem, and you need input from people with different perspectives and expertise.
Like crowdsourcing for research.
Exactly. They're tapping into online communities, expert networks, even digital trace data, like social media posts, online reviews, that sort of thing, to gather a wide range of perspectives.
So they're not just relying on their own limited viewpoint, but bringing in a whole chorus of voices to make those virtual personas more robust and representative.
Precisely. It's about leveraging the collective intelligence of a diverse group to create a more accurate and nuanced understanding of human behavior. And one of the most exciting things about this approach is the speed at which it can generate insights.
Really? So we're talking about a huge time saver compared to traditional research methods.
Absolutely. Virtual persona research allows for rapid data collection and analysis, making the whole process much faster.
So we're getting to those aha moments much quicker. That's great news for anyone who needs insights fast. But I'm also wondering, are these virtual personas just static snapshots of people, or can they actually learn and evolve over time?
That's a great question, and it gets to the heart of what makes this approach so powerful. These virtual personas are designed for continuous learning. They're not just fixed points. They constantly gather new data and adapt over time.
So they're not just mimicking human behavior. They're mimicking the process of human learning and development. That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is, and that constant feedback loop keeps the models fresh and relevant, which is especially crucial in today's fast-changing world. Think of it like a living ecosystem, always evolving and responding to new information.
That's a great analogy.
Yeah.
But with all this focus on data and simulations, how do researchers make sure they're not missing those unexpected insights? Those nuggets of wisdom that can really shift our perspective. I mean, humans can be pretty unpredictable, right?
Absolutely. And to capture that unpredictability, researchers actually pay close attention to deviations from expected patterns. They're looking for those outliers, those responses that don't quite fit the mold.
That's really smart. But with all this innovation, it's important to remember the fundamentals, right? Like this whole approach needs to be grounded in solid research.
Absolutely. And the virtual persona approach is built on a foundation of rigorous, peer-reviewed research. In fact, there's a compilation of 21 studies from various fields that demonstrates the strong academic backing of this methodology.
So it's not just a trendy idea.
Yeah.
It's a well-researched, validated approach that's gaining real momentum.
Precisely.
We're just at the beginning of this adventure, and who knows where it will lead us.
Well, one thing's for sure, it's going to be a fascinating ride.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on this incredible journey into the world of virtual personas. We hope you found it as thought-provoking and inspiring as we have. Until next time, keep exploring, stay curious, and remember, the future is full of possibilities.
Step into the simulation, a virtual audience of role-playing characters, each with a unique perspective. This is more than playful fantasy. Welcome to Rally, a private crowd feedback platform designed to offer swift, authentic insights. Within these digital personas, you can pose nearly any question. Is your marketing pitch resonating? Does your design spark delight? Here you receive direct, honest feedback, free of the echo chamber and groupthink often found elsewhere. Marketers validate campaigns before launch. Innovators refine product concepts. Entrepreneurs test prototypes across broad or niche specific digital audiences, all in a safe and private environment. Rally's simulated panel never tires and remains ready to guide you toward sharper, everyday decisions. By combining simplicity with insights from the crowd, Rally removes the barriers between your questions and your answers, all the wisdom, none of the scars.